in the sweeping silence of the Arizona frontier, where red cliffs rose like ancient guardians, and the desert wind carried the dry breath of forgotten centuries, a lone cowboy named Eli Mercer rode his paint horse along the dusty trail that stretched between Dead Mesa Ridge and the far-off cattle fields that shimmered under the sun. Eli was a quiet man, the type who had learned long ago that words were lighter than the weight of a day's work, and he preferred the company of his loyal dog Baxter and the calm rhythm of the desert, mornings over the rowdy saloon, chatter that filled nearby towns. That day, the sky burned a copper gold and the land seemed to hold its breath as though waiting for something to happen. And Eli felt it too, an unspoken tension settling on the rim of his thoughts. As he rounded a bend near a dry creek bed, he spotted something unusual, an abandoned wagon, tilted to one side, its wheel cracked clean through, its supplies scattered, and beside it stood a tall Apache woman with long black braids, a spear in her hand, and eyes that shimmered with both suspicion and unspoken strength. The moment she saw him, she lifted her spear slightly, not in threat but in warning, making it clear she didn't trust a cowboy drawn from the same world that had taken so much from her people. Eli stopped a few paces away, raising his hands slowly in a gesture of peace, Baxter standing alert at his side. He said gently, his voice calm as a creek at dawn. Looks like you're in trouble out here. The Apache woman studied him with a fierce, calculating gaze before she finally spoke. The axle broke, she said. I must return before nightfall. Her voice held steel and discipline, and Eli could tell she was more warrior than wanderer. Name's Eli, he said, slipping off his horse. If you'll allow it, I can fix that for you. She didn't answer right away, only watched him closely as though trying to determine whether his help was a trap. At last she gave a short nod. I am Noya, she said, her tone firm but not unfriendly. Eli examined the damage, noticing the snapped axle and the worn wood. And without another word he rolled up his sleeves and fetched his tools from his thul bag. Noya stood guard nearby, her spear always in hand, her eyes never leaving him. As he worked beneath the wagon, Eli could feel her gaze like the heat of the sun on his back, sharp, curious, cautious. He carved a new wedge from spare oak he carried, reinforcing the axle with rope and iron bands, occasionally glancing up to find Noya still watching every movement, still listening to the subtle creaks of his tools with the tension of a hawk, tracking its prey. But gradually, as minutes turned into an hour and Eli's hands moved with patient, honest skill, her shoulders softened and her grip on her spear loosened, just enough to show she was beginning to believe he meant no harm. Why help me? She finally asked, her voice quieter than before. Eli didn't look up as he tightened the last bolt. Because you needed help, he said simply. Ain't more complicated than that. Noya seemed to ponder his answer, and when the wagon at last stood repaired and sturdy again, she ran her hand along the reinforced axle and nodded with approval. You worked with care, she said. Most men rush work they don't value. Eli smiled faintly. My pa used to tell me anything worth doing is worth doing right, even more so when someone's stranded. Noya's expression flickered. Was it gratitude, or the brief breaking of an emotional wall? It vanished before he could read it. She climbed onto the wagon, but before she left, she performed a small gesture. She placed her closed fist over her heart and inclined her head. Eli recognized it as a respectful Apache acknowledgement, something not given lightly. You showed honor, she said. My people do not forget such things. With that she guided her horses forward, the wagon rolling steadily across the desert until it vanished into the orange horizon. Eli watched her go, feeling a strange sense of connection tug in his chest, feeling that maybe this brief encounter was not the end of a moment, but the beginning of a story he didn't yet understand. As the sun dipped behind the cliffs, Eli returned to his cabin nestled under the shadow of Dead Mesa Ridge. Baxter was restless, pacing and whining as though sensing something the human mind could not yet perceive. Eli fed him, lit his lantern, and tried to shake off the strange feeling that clung to him like dust. Something in the air felt different, charged, expectant. The night grew quiet, too quiet, and even the usual coyotes kept their distance. Eli lay in bed but could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Noya's face, her strength, her guarded gratitude, the silent weight behind her words. Near dawn, when the first pale light of day touched the land, a deep rumble shattered the quiet. Hoofbeats, many of them, rolled across the desert floor like thunder. Baxter growled, hackles raised. Eli grabbed his rifle, though he hoped he wouldn't need it, and stepped outside. What he saw made the breath hitch in his chest. His cabin was surrounded, fully encircled, by Apache riders, each painted in red, white, and black war paint, their spears raised, their faces carved with expressions of judgment and fury. Their horses pawed the earth, snorting steam into the chilly morning. It was not a small hunting party or a passing patrol. This was an entire ring of warriors, a storm of color and movement closing around his home. Eli stood completely still. Baxter barked but retreated behind him when one warrior shouted a command in Apache. Then the riders parted just enough for a massive figure to emerge. He was a mountain of a man, proud and commanding, Chief Tacklish, leader of the nearby Apache band. Eli had heard stories about him, a fierce, unbending leader who carried centuries of anger and hope in equal measure. Tacklish pointed his spear directly at Eli's chest. "Cowboy," the chief thundered, "you touched the wagon of my daughter." Eli blinked, startled. Daughter? He hadn't known. "You interfered with her journey," Tacklish continued. "You stood close to her. You touched her belongings. These things carry meaning." The warriors tightened their circle, their expressions accusing. Eli kept his voice steady. She needed help. That's all there was to it. A ripple of angry murmurs passed through the riders. "No man helps without wanting something," one warrior spat. Tacklish leaned forward on his horse, eyes burning. "What did you want from my daughter?" Eli took a small breath. Nothing. She was stranded. It was the decent thing to do. The air trembled between them with unspoken threats until suddenly another set of hoofbeats approached. From behind the circle, a figure rode forward, quiet as moonlight yet powerful, enough to shift the mood of every warrior present. Noya. She stopped her horse beside her father, her expression unreadable but her presence commanding. "He speaks truth," she declared. "He touched nothing without purpose. He showed restraint and honor. He fixed what was broken and asked for no reward." Her words carried weight, silencing even the most skeptical warriors. Chief Tacklish's jaw tightened, torn between tradition and the testimony of his daughter. "Why defend him?" he asked. Noya didn't hesitate. "Because he saved me from being stranded. Because he acted with respect. Because kindness from an outsider is not always a disguise." The chief glared at Eli once more. "You will come with us," he declared. Eli didn't flinch. "If that's what it takes to prove my intentions, then I'll come." And in that tense, breathless moment, the warriors parted, creating a path for him. He mounted his horse slowly, Baxter trotting nervously beside him. He didn't know what awaited him, whether it was judgment or violence or something neither side yet understood. But as he followed Noya and the ring of war-painted riders into the rising sun, one thought pulsed like a drum in his chest. Helping her was just the beginning. The real storm is what I'm riding into now. And as the chapter closes, the narrator's voice echoes, "If this story has pulled you in, make sure to subscribe, because Chapter 2 will reveal the truth behind the Apache riders, the chief's warning, and the dangerous destiny Eli never expected."